I met, I don't even know how long ago it was.
About a year, maybe. I feel like it was
Yeah.
right before everything went crazy. I think it was like one of the last live things I went to with real people.
Yeah, there were real people there, right? It
People
was a
there together.
yeah. So, and we were talking about our books then, and so Heather, I was wondering if maybe we could start by you giving us a little bit of a synopsis about the baddest girl on the planet.
Yeah, so The Baddest Girl on the Planet is a coming of age story at its heart. So it centers on Evie Austin, who's the protagonist, who is a young girl born and raised on Hatteras Island, North Carolina. So now when Evie's a young girl, she has a chance encounter with Mike Tyson, who this has a lasting impact on her, as when Mike Tyson's reputation kind of takes a nosedive there, it kind of intertwines with Evie becoming labeled as sort of the bad girl in her little island community. And Hatteras Island was such an inspiration to me for so many different reasons. So there's like the natural beauty of it, and then the metaphorical aspects, but then also just thinking about what it would be like to grow up on this little tiny island, isolated literally in the middle of the ocean on a sandbar. Like it's this incredibly tight, close community where everybody knows everything about everyone. And so I thought if a girl gets sort of stuck with this reputation, it's going to be something that she's going to contend with, and that's going to sort of try to dog her for the rest of her years. So the story kind of is Evie sort of coming to terms with this, but it's also the way she does it is, through her relationships. So with relationships with her family and the romantic relationships, some of which are very bad choices. And then friendship. The friendship part of the story is like, I think, one of the truest sort of love stories in this book. A friendship with a girl that she meets who's coming to vacation on Hatteras Island, Charlotte. And so the course of the story is just kind of Evie coming into her own. And I didn't want to stop at like when she turns, 18 or 20. I wanted it to be sort of coming of age into your adulthood. So it ends in Evie's 30s. And I didn't do it chronologically. So it's sort of bouncing back and forth in time a little bit. So you get a little snippet of a story, and then later on, maybe a bit more about it, a little more of the fuller story.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I was excited to talk to you again today about it was because I feel like we're on opposite spectrums of North Carolina, telling like at the root of it kind of similar stories, even though like there's so many differences.
Right.
If we think about it thematically, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's so cool. Like we're riding like not coast to coast, but like east to west in North Carolina, and like, but there's so many similarities. Like even though there are tons of differences, I think at the heart, like there's a lot of similarities in both of our books.
Mm-hmm. One of the things that really drove my novel was a sense of place and that sense of a small community and what people know and don't know. Um, you live in Raleigh now. I know you've lived other places. What brought you specifically to this coastal setting? And you talked a little bit about the metaphor, but did you have experience living there? Yeah, tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so yeah, I am in Raleigh now. So I call myself a North Carolinian for the past, I guess, almost 8 years now, 7.5 years. But I grew up in Ohio, and I grew up going on vacation to the Outer Banks to Hatteras Island every summer, and we would camp in a little tent camper, just like me and my mom and dad and my brother, at the Frisco National Seashore Campground. So like no running water and like no air conditioning, no TV. We didn't even have internet, but like, my kids would be horrified, but I thought it was like the best place on earth. I loved it. It was like what we looked forward to every year. And so like every year we would go down there. So I kind of grew up going down there as like my, I was just in love with the place. I loved it so much. It was so beautiful. It was just such a happy time for us. And then as I got a little bit older, we would go down more often, like in the winter time, in the off season. And I sort of started to get a bigger picture of what it would be like to or started imagining what it would be like to live there year round, what it would be really like to, have this one road that, like, if you want to go to McDonald's or go to see a movie, you have to drive an hour up this one little road, and it's a beautiful road. Like, it's magical, it's wonderful, but like, to live there your whole life, like, I don't know, what would it be like really? So I started thinking about that, and that's when I kind of started writing things set there. And then after I got married, I actually got married there in Buxton, at the church there. My fiance at the time was looking for jobs and had randomly or serendipitously got an interview on the day of our wedding
Wow.
at the Loco Sound in Buxton. And so the day after our wedding, he went and, did this interview and got the job. And we were like, well, should we, bail on this house we were going to buy in Pittsburgh and move down to Hatteras Island? So we ended up deciding, yeah, we did it. So we did it, moved down there. And we ended up living there for a year. And we left after that because I kind of immediately got pregnant, and like Superstorm Sandy immediately happened, like washed all the roads and the bridges, and it kind of and then it was winter, so like a lot of the employment there is seasonal, so like really wasn't a job for a while there. I was pregnant, and it just seemed like eventually after the time Jonah was born, we just sort of ended up deciding when he was a little baby that probably and like my husband wanted to switch, he wanted to change to IT, and I wanted to have a place with a writing community, like where I could have in person. And so we ended up going inland a little bit, but I got to have that year living there on Hatteras Island. And I'd actually written the book before that. So it was sort of a time where I was like, well, what did I get right and what did I get wrong?
Yeah. What did you get wrong? Do you remember anything you got wrong that you changed after living there? Or that maybe you tweaked a little bit after living there?
Yeah, I think so I wrote a chapter of Evie being postpartum. This doesn't really relate to the place, but after she has her baby, and I was just imagining it at the time, and as it turns out, it could have been much worse because mine was much worse. I kind of put so much more in there, so I kind of added a little bit to that. Yeah. I did add more to that. I added like stuff about nursing and things like that. But for the relationship with the place, like I don't think I changed that much. Like most of it, I was like, yeah, I think I kind of mostly got the feel of it.
Yeah, because you had been there a lot.
I'd been there a lot, yeah.
Did anything surprise you that you felt like you really got right, that maybe you had questions about prior to living there year round?
Yeah, it was kind of like when I got there, I made this conscious effort to myself. I'm like, I'm not gonna lose like the sense of wonder and beauty and magic. I'm like, I'm gonna keep track of this, and I'm gonna like, I'm not gonna, become immune to it. But like I did, like it just becomes like the place that you live, and it becomes the place where all your problems are and your job is, and where you have to, go up to the grocery store. And yeah, it was just sort of became like, yeah, it's just where you live. It's not like this enchanted fairy tale of place where you escape to anymore. It just becomes kind of your home, which with all its ups and downs.
Did you get tired of that one road?
What?
Sorry. Did you get tired of that one road?
Kinda, yeah. It's especially in the winter. Like the winter was kind of rough. Like it was there's like not like everything shuts down in the winter. Like it was something. Oh, hang on, I got a little interloper here. Hannah, come get the baby. Come get the baby. Here comes the little guy. My husband is gonna be back, and he's not back. Bring him the computer. Okay.
So Heather has joined the experience of publishing during COVID at home. Fair. All of these events include our entire family.
Yep, this is it. Welcome. Yeah, did your book got kind of, you got COVID too, right?
Yeah, my book got COVID.
You got coroned.
Yeah, that's a verb now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I released in September of 2020. So, we just rolled with it.
Yeah.
You, um, I guess, along with Blair, of course, had some choices to make too, whether you
Mhm.
released or not. When was your original release date? Do you remember now?
I've been, I don't even know. Definitely, I know it got pushed back once for sure. And then I think it got pushed back again because I know it was set to release and then it was going to release in the fall. But my publisher at Blair, they all sort of thought that everyone who had gotten bumped out originally was going to get bumped out to fall. So there would be a big rush of publications. So they thought, let's just hold off until March, which it felt like forever at that time, but it worked out well. And it also kind of want to be on people's radar for the summer,
Yeah.
I would like it to be a beach read, something you can read, pack with you and read in the sand. So hopefully that'll work out.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when I knew I was going to talk to you. I was like, this is actually kind of the perfect time for
Yeah, I think
it's a
so.
great summer read. So
Yeah.
So, speaking of the book, and you mentioned that this was a coming of age story, and even though the narrative goes back and forth in time, Evie really develops as a character. And so I was wondering if maybe you would share a passage with us that speaks to that.
Yeah, I'm going to start a little passage when she's a child. So like I said, it doesn't start off with this chapter, but it kind of goes back to it. So I'm just going to read just a couple minutes and then maybe go to when she's a grown up. So this is from chapter 3, which takes place in 1999, which is take him out, which is kind of significant because it also coincides with the moving of the Cape Hatteras Lighthouse, which due to erosion, it was going to wash away. So they just gonna pick it up and move it along. So that's happening while as Evie is having this kind of tumult within her family. Take him out. So this is, sorry. This is from part spell, part seance, part prayer. My name is Evie Austin. You say it like it's 2 letters, E-V. Sometimes that's how I sign my name, Evie Austin, even though I know it's not true. My middle name is Anne, so it should be E.A. Austin to be true. My whole first name is Evelyn, but I hate that name. It sounds awful, like a little old lady. When my dad dropped off me and my brother to live for the summer at our Aunt Faye's house, which isn't a house at all, but a big old camper van, he took my face in his hands and said, Evelyn, you be good. I hate being Evelyn. I crossed my eyes at him and turned my face away. Then he and Aunt Faye started talking. My Aunt Faye said, no, I do not want to keep them at your house. What if she comes back? And my dad said, she's not coming back. They were talking about my mom, who moved to Buxton for the summer for an important job. If it wasn't important, she wouldn't have moved for the whole summer. Then my dad left and went to work. I'm 9 years old, and now I'm a gypsy. I live in the National Seashore Campground in Frisco, North Carolina. Frisco is a town on an island, and this island is full of danger. My island has a nickname, and it is the Graveyard of the Atlantic. This is on account of all the shipwrecks it's caused. So that's one source of danger, things that cause shipwrecks, such as shifting shoals, which I learned all about from Mrs. Hammond in science class this year. There are many other dangers, including jellyfish, riptides, hurricanes, cactus, and brothers. My big brother Nate teases me all the time. I warn the tourists about sources of danger when I talk with them, but I leave out my brother, mostly because he's not a force of nature. It's a real big camper that we live in. You have to pull it with a truck. Aunt Faye stays in it all the time since she sold her house and hasn't yet got a new one. She says she likes it just fine. We're going to live here while our dad's busy with tourist season, since he'll be gone too much to take care of us. Dad comes to visit us most days before he goes to work at the restaurant. My mom has not yet come to visit. She's awfully busy being on the welcoming committee for the Lighthouse Movers from Buffalo, New York. That's another danger, erosion. That old ocean just ate away and ate away and ate away at the beach so much that the lighthouse, which is the tallest lighthouse in America, could topple over and wash off at any second. That's why it's getting moved. They're going to pick it up and move it inland on a little train track is what they're going to do. So it's very important to treat the lighthouse movers nice, or else they might ruin our lighthouse. No lighthouse would mean no tourists. Tourists love lighthouses. There's not a thing you can't buy here that doesn't have a big old lighthouse on it. I've even seen dog hats with lighthouses on them. I wish I had a dog, but I wouldn't make it wear a hat, not unless it wanted to. Tourists love to buy things with lighthouses on them, but this is complicated. My dad says they are good for the economy. My dad works for a restaurant, and he feeds tourists every day. He works late, which is why he can't visit us every single night. He likes it when tourists buy things. My M.F.A says tourists are a nuisance. Our economy did just fine for 200 years before they started showing up. M.F.A has a bumper sticker on her truck that says, if it's tourist season, why can't I shoot them? I don't tell anybody, but in secret, I like the tourists. They make summer exciting. I spy on them all the time. I get real low behind a sand dune and I watch them. But there's been nobody interesting yet at the Frisco National Seashore Campground. Just a bunch of boring old fishermen. It is only June, so maybe the interesting tourists just aren't out of school yet. I'll stop there. Well, for Evie as a little girl.
Great. I love that. You know, I grew up in a tourism economy in Cherokee. So my parents owned a small business, and I feel that with Evie that I remember it being exciting, right? Like who was coming in to town and watching them and all that.
Yeah, it's totally different. It's a different world with the tourism economy. Like, it really is.
It really is. How difficult was that to write in the voice of a younger female for you?
I was kind of surprised. I don't know that I ever really tried it before in the younger voice, but it came pretty easily. I think Evie's voice was the main driving thing that I really latched onto it from the beginning, and I wasn't really planning to write a whole book about her at the start. I just wanted to write this little spot. I wanted to figure out why she got divorced and write that. But it was just so much fun to write her. Her voice was just so alive to me that once I started off writing her as an adult, but once I kind of latched onto that, I kind of it sort of carried naturally into imagining what she would have been like as a child. So it was fun to sort of explore those different phases of her being.
Mm-hmm. So if you were switching back and forth between her as a child and an adult, did you, in terms of writing voice, did you write all of the adult pieces together, or did you switch back and forth in the writing process?
I switched back and forth in the process a lot. I started off, I think the first thing I wrote ended up being the first chapter in the book, but that's when she's 23, early 20s. And then I wrote some that was she was maybe a little bit older, but still in her 20s. And then I wrote a couple of them from there. So I did start off with her as an adult, just sort of in the going up and down through her adulthood and through her development there. But then I did go back to when she was a child and then when she was a teenager. So I think, and then I kind of went back to her as more of an adult, in her 30s, hopefully making a little better choices or trying to.
Yeah, that seems really difficult when in the process to go back and forth in the voice. That's really impressive.
Really. I'm impressed how you wrote a male. I've never had any luck. I've always struggled so hard to write the first person male point of view. Everyone's always I don't know, sounds kind of like a girl.
Well, I teach high school. And then earlier off camera, Heather met my two boys. I'm surrounded by that energy all the time. Yes, I know that voice fairly well, so I hope I did justice. Yeah. I actually struggle to write female voices, as they develop. It's funny, in the past two manuscripts, they've kind of developed later in the writing process as other characters in the book, but as a protagonist, I struggle with that. In fact, a project right now, I have a female protagonist, so I may call you. trying to speak like an actual woman. I don't know.
Right. I'll do this.
Sure. So did you have another piece that you'd plan to read that's her a little bit later then?
Oh yeah. So this one, I was gonna read another little spec, just another couple minutes from. This is actually, I think I touched on this earlier, the postpartum chapter after Evie. So Evie goes away to college, like she gets off the island, like thinks she's escaping her reputation, and she immediately gets pregnant. So she's 19 and she's moving back to Hatteras Island, Hatteras Village, and now has a new baby. So that has not gone well for her. So this is, let's try to think if you need to know anything else. The name Charlotte that comes up is her best friend, who is had moved down there, and then she's gone back. She's back to college. Everybody is. So this is postpartum, and it takes place in 2009. You know you've lost it when you start writing letters to Dear Abby. Dear Abby, I look at my baby's squalling red face and I want to run away. What do I do? Horrible in Hatteras. When the paper boy thunks the Outer Banks Sentinel against your door at 7 in the morning, you go straight to the comics and TV listings, hoping Dear Abby will enlighten you. But she never responds. You have a birth certificate that says you're a mother, Austin Charles Oden. You look on the back for instructions, but there aren't none. You feel like the only horrible, unprepared mother in the universe. Your son cries, and for a minute you pretend you don't hear him, scanning the page for your horoscope. You're pretty sure you've lost it when you read it and legitimately think that the stars have aligned so that you can leave. Family members could be upset over frustrating events in their lives, and these moods could spill over to you. Today, it would be best to leave them alone to work things out in their own way. For the 4 days since you've been home from the hospital, your mother has left your dad to handle things at the inn and come over to your little white house on Elizabeth Lane every morning. She arrives just after the Sentinel and just after Stephen leaves to work in his father's hardware store. She comes grudgingly, but she comes. She's so efficient, it's terrifying, changing your baby's diaper with quick, clean motions, handing him to you to feed. You press the baby to your breast, but he won't eat. You poke your nipple into his mouth. He won't take it. He's never taken it without a fight. He cries, his tiny face bunching and crinkling, pink mouth open in a howl that pierces your eardrum. He wails, he flails, he screams, he flails his tiny fists. Your incompetence burbles in your chest. You think he senses this and doesn't want to drink incompetent breast milk. Your mom sighs and takes the baby from you, jiggling him up and down. You don't know what you're doing. You've never even had a dog. You live on this scrawny, unprotected spit of sand between the Atlantic Ocean and the Pamlico Sound, a flat, sandy, cactus-ridden prison. You just escaped to college on the mainland, just fallen in love with biology and Shakespeare and Stephen Oden, who was even cuter in college than he was in high school, when you got pregnant. Most likely to get knocked up and move back home, might as well have been written in your high school yearbook. You lived up to your reputation, Easy Evie. You say it out loud as you stare down at your sleeping son, at his placid face and twitching baby fingers, his tiny nose encrusted with a fine, translucent rim of dried snot, his patchy alien scaled scalp. What to expect when you're expecting never said that motherhood would feel like punishment, like solitary confinement. Your best friend, Charlotte, stayed with you while you were pregnant, but now she's gone back to college. All your friends have. Even the tourists are gone. The baby wakes up, his eyes blinking in unfocus. He twists, writhes, and the screaming starts. You pick him up. You spend your day bouncing, shushing, swinging, swaying, an odd combination of busyness and tedium. You try to sleep when he sleeps, like all the books say, but every time you close your eyes, you see tiny limbs, umbilical stumps, and wide open screaming mouths, empty, waiting to be fed. Stephen comes home, and it's as if you're looking at his high cheekbones and pale eyes through a sheer gray film. He's covered, blurred, like everything else. When he takes over swaying duty, you hunker in the upstairs office and call Charlotte. I don't recognize myself, you tell her. I think I'm going to join a sorority, she says. You write another letter to Dear Abby. Dear Abby, I made a mistake. I'm not ready to be a mother. I want things to go back to the way they were. What do I do? Regretful and Hatteras. You don't mean to, but that night you fall asleep with the baby in bed beside you. You wake up sweating, trapped between your husband and your son, unable to move, your body pinned between theirs. You weasel yourself out of the covers and put the baby in his crib, sliding your arms out from beneath his body with glacial slowness, then go to the bathroom and stare at yourself in the mirror. You weren't kidding when you told Charlotte you didn't recognize yourself. Puffy-faced, dark-circled, greasy-haired. The baby starts to cry, but you sit down to pee anyway. You're still bleeding.
That's, I love that, that selection. And it also makes me want to buy this book for every new mother I know.
Right.
Just like that is the experience,
That's
right?
it. Yes. And when I wrote that, like, I actually emailed my friends who had babies. I was like, you gotta tell me the real story here. Like, tell me the truth. It's like, I don't think I hear it. Like, you don't know. And like, they told me like they gave me their stories, but yeah, like I said, I could have written a lot more from after what I experienced. I should have could have made it a lot worse. Would have been one of those things where like, it's not believable.
But these stories are so relatable, and we oftentimes don't talk about all the nitty gritty
Yeah.
details. But that's also why these female friendships are so important.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and you do a great job of providing us with this complex friendship between Charlotte and Evie. Can you tell us a little bit about how that developed and what you wanted to bring out in their friendship?
Yeah. I love, like, I think that's one of my favorite things about this is Charlotte and Evie. I started writing them a long time ago, so I've been like sort of living with them for a long time. And for a long time I wrote from Charlotte's perspective as, like, the girl from Ohio who comes down, and so like writing these beautiful lyrical passages of description and stuff like that. But then I switched to kind of try and get Evie's point of view of it, so I kind of wanted that full perspective on their friendship, but I wanted it to be these girls that are very different. Like, they're very different people, they have very different experiences, but at the core there's something similar that each recognizes in the other, that just kind of connects them, and they have to work at it. Like, it's a long distance friendship. Like, Charlotte lives in Ohio and she comes down to visit, and then when they're grown-ups they can get together a little bit more, but it's still something that they have to like think about putting the effort into. Like, they have to write to each other and call each other and stay connected that way, but they do, like, it's important to them and they stay connected. And I love to write about sort of the evolution of that, because I think like these female friendships, like, it can be so powerful and like really these strong, beautiful things. Like, some of the most like wonderful like long-term relationships in my life are these other women, these platonic female friendships, and I think it just adds like so much to my life and to Evie's life and Charlotte's too. And I wanted to show that friendship as evolving, and it's not not the same as when they were little girls, but they are still forging this connection and growing together and changing along with each other, and like still like it's the longest term relationship in either of their lives. And like, I think like that's one of the, at its heart, like the real love story there. Like, they're making this effort to like change and grow together, and just always be there for each other no matter what.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. I have some friends that I have been friends with since kindergarten.
Yeah.
It's incredible to have those long-term relationships with people.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, even people or characters who are so different to still have those relationships. That's wonderful to see. So, I think you told us a little bit about Mike Tyson.
Oh, yeah.
We can kind of get at this a little bit based on what you told us, but the title, The Baddest Girl in the World, or on the planet, excuse me, The Baddest Girl on the Planet. That's a tall order. So how did you arrive at the title?
Yeah, so the title, so Mike Tyson is also plays into the title here. So I came to Mike Tyson through a female friendship, through one of my friends. I was having lunch with her one day. She and I and another friend were like sitting at Red Lobster having one of those long like leisurely lunches that you can have before children, just like chatting, and she drops this little anecdote about how Mike Tyson used to watch her do cartwheels when she was a little girl, and how she was like so disappointed in him when the rape charges happened, and then like the Evander Holyfield stuff, and like I was like, what are you talking about? I know she grew up in Ohio. I'm like, what are you talking about? Mike Tyson watched you do cartwheels. She's like, yeah, like we live near Don King, and she just like said it like real offhandedly, like, like, oh yeah, Don King had this training camp up in Ohio and Mike Tyson would come. And it's like, what? I was like, it just like, it really like, I don't know, it just got into my brain. I asked her if I could write about it. I'm like, Sarah, can I write about this? She's like, yeah, it's fine. But like, I started to think, like, she just said it so offhandedly, like everyone in her town just kind of knew, like, that's where Mike Tyson trained and like, whatever. But she was so disappointed in him. But I started to think, like, how would that turn out if it was someone who didn't live there and who, like, this was extremely novel and something really interesting that you would take back with you to your community. Like she's gonna brag about it. Like, yeah, Mike Tyson is her best friend. Like, he watched her do cartwheels. So that's how I made it happen. I made Charlotte live in that small Ohio town because Charlotte was always from Ohio. And Evie goes to visit, and like, yeah, Charlotte just happens to live near Don King. And like, Evie has this like she thinks he's this great guy, he's a celebrity, and he's like paying attention to her and clapping, like stopping his, boxing to watch her. So she takes that back and like brags about it to all of her friends. And then, he rapes someone, and it just does not, the kids are not going to forget that. Like, they're going to latch onto that and like, oh, your best friend. So anyway, one of Mike Tyson's nicknames was the baddest man on the planet. And so that's where the title comes from, the baddest girl on the planet. And I'd initially tried to title one of the chapters. I kept wanting to use that because like I thought it was fun and really cool how it tied into the Mike Tyson stuff. So I wanted to use that for one of the chapter titles, but I could never make it work. Like, I couldn't ever, like, I would try to hammer it in there and it just wouldn't fit. And then my friend Jen, who one of my friends from first grad school, we read each other's work like codependently. So she was the one who said, she's like, why don't you call the whole book that? Like, that could be the book's title. And I was like, yeah, you're right, that's the book's title. So that's how that came to be. I've had a lot of people comment like, I don't know, is she the baddest girl on the planet? Is she really that bad? I'm like, this title is misleading. Like, I don't know.
It's no, not like a self-help book. I mean,
you're right, it's not a self-help book. No, she's not bad. It doesn't do with the Mike Tyson's nickname.
Did you have a working title before that?
That was it.
I'm always curious about titles. They interest me.
Yeah, I got lucky that they liked it. They were like, yeah, we're not going to change the title. I was like, oh,
yeah, that's
really
great. That's so awesome. Oh man, I had something I was going to ask you specifically, but I know what it was. Do you think Mike Tyson's going to read the book, Heather?
Honestly, I have a little panic attack every time I think about this. It's like, because you're sitting there, you're like in your pajamas writing about Mike Tyson, like, haha, but now it's a real book in real life. And like, what if you read it? I hope not.
But I'd love to see a picture of him just like maybe on the beach.
On the beach, his toes in the sand. Yeah. I think the book does show him a little bit of grace though. Like in the end, Evie has to come, like, yes, he did this, he had it was bad, the stuff he was horrible. But I think he's also growing and evolving as a human being, like the things he's done in charities and the good things that he's doing. And I think that's part of Evie's coming to terms with herself, is to come to terms with Mike Tyson, which she kind of does in one of the last chapters. That was kind of important in her development, was to also sort of step back and see him as a full human being with all these other influences that played on him and his choices and his actions. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think hopefully if he reads it, he won't be too mad at me.
I'm sure he will. So since we've been talking tonight, you referenced that it took you, you were talking about postpartum, and then we've seen your kids, right? So, or I saw your kid, your other kids early. So this is taking some time, as books tend to do. How long did it take you to write? I hate this question, by the way, because I can't even remember. So I'm just giving you the question I hate.
No, it's I would say about 3-ish years, and I actually wrote it like way before kids. I wrote it when I was in West Virginia, the bulk of it. And so I think 3-ish, 2.5, 3 years writing it, and then another year revising it, and then starting the process of sending it out, which that got interrupted by actual babies. So it was going out for a while there, and then it hit a stalled point before I started sending it out again.
Mhm.
So it's been a while. It's been a minute.
Yeah. So, what advice then do you give to folks who are writing, specifically writing novels?
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to aspiring novelists?
I guess, I don't know, just sort of being stubborn and not giving up on it if you believe in the project. And also that it doesn't have to happen immediately. It doesn't have to happen in your 20s. It doesn't have to be like the first thing. Like, I have another book in a drawer that needs fixed up, and like it, I think it's, especially when these other events in your life are going on, especially when you're having, actual kids and jobs and moving and all this other stuff, like it's okay to like let it go fallow for a little bit and come back to it if you believe in it. Which, I'd always sort of, I don't know, I always liked what I was writing. I always thought it was fun and wanted to go back to it, and I wanted to write what I wanted to read. And I'd gotten enough close calls, enough, we really like this, just not quite enough to publish it, but enough that I didn't think it was a total, pile of crap. So I was like, I'm just gonna kind of keep sending it out. And that was like one of the things that I kind of could do a little bit when I was still taking care of all the kids, was, takes a little bit less time than actually writing. Not much to send it out, but like the actual writing, that took a nosedive.
Yeah.
But still sort of research presses and send it out and stuff.
Yeah. So, are you writing now?
Kind of, ish. I was gonna have, the littlest guy was gonna be in preschool 2 days a week, and the big ones were gonna be in school, and I was gonna have these 2 mornings where I could write, and like they're all in virtual school now, and the baby's not in school at all.
Yeah.
We have a little pod going on, so sometimes I can escape a little bit. But so I am writing more than I had been, but not as much as I will be once I have actual space to myself for a couple hours a day. Or by fall, hopefully by fall I'll have a few mornings a week.
Yeah, I think it's difficult enough being a parent to find that it's not just time, right? It's that headspace to wrap yourself in.
Headspace. Oh my gosh. Like, it's just like, it's such a shift. Like, it really is. And I sort of need that sustained concentration when I'm trying to write something new. And I just cannot get it. Like, I can, like, honestly, like, it's like social media posts, like that's what I can get done, and that's what I can get done on my phone, and that's what I'm like, that's what I can do right now. And so, that's what I'm doing. Speaking of a head coming at me.
Well, I think things have been a little bit harder too with COVID. I've talked to a lot of writers who, and hopefully we're kind of I hope that we're at the tail end of this, but in the midst of everything, it was hard to write and hard to read.
It was
for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard a lot of other writers say the same thing.
Yeah, it impacted everything. Like, it was hard to do anything. Like, I was in I got in a real bad space there. Like, it was hard to do anything, and they're kind of like stuck you back in survival mode, like just like trying to hang on, let alone read or create anything.
Mm-hmm. Well, you are at a great point right now with the launch of the book, and headed into summer, and we were just talking with the folks at Malaprops, where people are able to browse a little bit more at bookstores, and so I'm really excited for you, for the whirlwind that is ahead of additional events. But I'm really excited about this book from the point that we talked a year ago, I guess.
And I loved yours too. I think they have a lot to say to each other. I think Evian County could be a be buddies.
Yeah, yeah. It's like maybe if we had a time machine, they could hang out.
Right, it's time, yeah.
So before we go to questions, because I know that we're set up to take those, I was going to ask if there was anything in particular that you wanted to make sure you said about the book, or that readers take away from the book that we haven't talked about yet.
Yeah, I think we hit on most of the stuff that's most important to me, because I think I want people to know that, like, though this is it's not a traditional narrative arc, like it's doing this sort of fracturing and refractions in different spaces in time and point of view. So it's doing some fun things with that's like on the literary side. That's like I was kind of playing with that, just having fun and keeping it interesting. But I think it's also, I tried to make it, I think it's funny, and it's like something that's approachable, and that people would pick up and want to read, or like maybe if it wasn't something on either side, like on the literary side or on the like more lighter side, I feel like it's sort of walking that line, which is the stuff that I like to read too, like stuff that's literary but also accessible and fun. And yeah, I think that's like the friendships, the relationships, and sort of Evie coming to grow into herself like in this specific place, and like the place is super important too, and like I hopefully, like something I worked really hard to get right in the book was to get the sense of place right.
Yeah, great. Well, I think Stephanie is going to set us up for any questions.
Hi, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry about my pop in, pop out. I missed timed there, but it's virtual events, so that stuff happens. I would like to start by thanking the two of you for the conversation. Heather, in particular, for literally juggling your author life and your home life. Yeah, so we appreciate you persevering and your kids sort of doing the same as well. So thank you so much. Yeah, this is big.
I'm so happy to be here. It's so nice to be able to talk to people and reach out across the Zoom universe. And
exactly. Really yeah. And this is, we were talking about that earlier. This has become sort of part of it, and I suppose that the standard advice is to never, like if you're an actor, to never act with animals or children, right? And so it probably the same caveat should apply to these sorts of things, but that is just not an option. So here we are.
Here we are.
So I also want to give a little shout out to Blair, who published The Baddest Girl on the Planet. And in particular, and this has traditionally felt like, we'll go to another cliche, which is never judge a book by its cover, except that when you work with books, you know that there's a certain element of judging books by their covers, right? There's a lot of books out there, and they have to cut through. Mm-hmm. And so I just want to shout out to Blair in general. They're a nonprofit press and they're awesome, but also for just another really great looking book. It's just a handsome book. It does. You were talking about the kind of book it is, the kind of reading experience it can be. The cover really says, to me anyway, deep summer read, right? Like layered, like deeply layered beach read, right?
Exactly
like
what this is. Yeah.
And it's just right on. As an aside, I'm not putting down lighter beach reads, y'all. I'm all about it. Like romance novels, all the stuff where there's no judgment, but I'm just saying, like, it hit the mark. And so, I just want to, just put in a plug to, recommend it on that level for sure. Especially now because I do feel like the attention required to read, I know that's something has been challenging for me in the pandemic. And for a lot of people. And so again, as we are gradually getting to the place where we can breathe a little bit more.
Mhm.
Like that's the other thing. It's like, oh, it's summer, and I can maybe engage with some reading material in a different way. So thank you for providing that and giving us a place to connect. And you had me at like Mike Tyson obsession. just saying. So I just want to add, we've got a few minutes left, and so just want to ask one more process question. And you can both answer it if you like. Annette, this might be another one that you hate, though. Because we know it took you a while to get through the book, but I always like to hear about the basics of writing, which is, place was really important to you. Is the basic sort of like, are you outlining? Are you winging it? Are things just sort of coming together a thought at a time, or characters kind of speaking to you? Or tell us a little bit about that.
I've always wished that I could be an outliner and like plan things out and have it there and ready to go and just like sit down and write it, but it's never worked for me. So I'm just playing by the seat of my pants, like honestly. None of this was planned out. And it was just the voice that drove it for me. The voice and the setting were kind of what kind of made me hang on and not want to let the project go and turn it into something of a bigger project. But it's I'm a seat of the pantser on this one.
Yeah, I'll answer that I'm the opposite. I am very much an outliner now. It used to not be, but specifically starting with this novel, because of a class I took with Heather Newton, that focused on, it was a writing workshop through the Great Smokies Writers Program, and the class had the assignment to write a synopsis, a first chapter, a climax chapter, and a final chapter, which kind of terrifying. The synopsis was terrifying.
Yeah.
But it worked well for me because I knew, like, after I had that structure, or general structure, which changes, but I knew what I'd be writing when I had time to write. And I'm a person who loves lists. Like I'm kind of laughing because I'm working on my national board renewal right now. And if you could see my office floor, you would see like the outline of my renewal submission all around me. So I am the opposite.
I love both of those answers, and it's great that you're both here and that you are on the opposite ends of that spectrum, and that you have these, you both have these wonderful novels that are deeply rooted in place that we have already established can sort of speak to each other in a way, even though they're quite different, and the characters are quite different. So that's great. I feel like on a completely gut-based, unscientific poll level, out of the number of times that we've asked this question, in particular during our virtual event time, we're leaning a little more towards pantsers than plotters in terms of, I feel like it's fewer the authors who are like Annette, where, you're really sort of laying everything out, but it does happen. And I never tire of hearing about that from authors, and I know we always have a lot of writers who watch these events, and it's just so great to hear how infinite really the sort of your options are in terms of how you approach the craft of writing, the art, and how you can get to where you want to be. You Heather had some really encouraging words earlier for aspiring novelists, and that feels like another encouragement, seeing two people who have published, who approach things very differently, and then end up here. So with that said, the last thing I'd like to do this evening before we let everybody go and let you, Heather, go to your children, is if each of you would like to recommend a book by some other than each other's, And we'll reinforce that recommendation from our end as well for both of those books, for The Baddest Girl on the Planet and Even As We Breathe. But any other book that you for whatever reason highly recommend that folks pick up once they're back in the reading habit?
Yeah, like one of my favorite things about the publishing process has been connecting with the other debut authors who are also releasing at the same time. And so we've been swapping, advanced copies and like reading each other's work and kind of supporting each other. And so I've read like some really amazing books. So I'm going to shout out some of the other 2021 debuts. So one of the most recent ones I read is called Wait for God to Notice. Sari Fordham, Sari, S-A-R-I, Say It Like Mary. It's a memoir set in Uganda during the reign of Idi Amin. That's where she grew up. They were missionaries. I'm also reading right now. Can I give a list instead of just one? I know you said one. I'm reading No Heaven for Good Boys, Keisha Bush. So I love it when there's a serendipity in your reading life. So I just read the one set in Uganda, and now Keisha's book is set in Senegal. So I'm going from like coast to coast of Africa. So I'm reading that one out. That's fiction. One of the most stunning memoirs that I read is called The Part That Burns. Janine Willett, Ouellette is her name. And then let's see, I'll shout out another memoir. I feel like I'm in another life I'm going to be a memoir writer. Like it's all sort of my secondary genre, but it's called Inside Passage, Kima Waterfield. So those are just a few. Oh, and Annie and the Wolves. I gotta shout Annie and the Wolves. It was by Andromeda Romano Lax. So good. Like these are ones I just could not put down. So those are mine. Oh yeah, look at that. He's got recommendations. He recommends Daniel Tiger.
Yes. Well, let's see. I would recommend. My good buddy Robert Geip has his third book out called Pop, in the third book of the trilogy, and I just have so much respect for Robert and what he does. It's such a unique style. Been reading Liberty by Caitlin Greenidge. I think I'm Greenidge. Maybe saying her name wrong, which I apologize for. And I just really love her storytelling. It's just a beautiful narrative. And then this is front of mind because I had this crazy unique opportunity to have Joy Harjo at my house the other day, which is like a dream come true kind of crazy thing that happened. So of course, the anthology, When the Light of the World Was Subdued, Our Songs Came Through. That one has been out a little bit, but she just released another called Living Nations, Living Words. And I'm a little bit obsessed with anthologies right now. I'm working on a project and just really thinking about how anthologies are put together. And as I mentioned, I've had a little bit of a difficult time engaging in reading during this time and teaching in the things that I'm doing. So I like how I can, read poem, a couple of poems or a short story. And so I've enjoyed specifically the first anthology, and I'm looking forward to the next one. I haven't read Living Nations, Living Words yet, but I'm looking forward to that.
Those are all great recommendations. Thank you. So my personal to be read pile, which is already pretty high, will get a little higher as well. And I also really loved Liberty and really enjoy Robert Geip's. It's one of those things. Even if you think that you're not going to get into a graphic novel, check Geip's books out anyway.
Yep.
Yeah, my recommendations. Thank you both so much. Again, I just love listening to authors who know and like each other just talk about what you do. just just to state it plainly. So thank you for letting us sit in on that with the two of you. We appreciate it. And Heather, congratulations on the book, on The Baddest Girl on the Planet. And Annette, thank you as always for being with us. And it's great. It was a lovely all North Carolina evening. Really delightful. Yeah. And thanks to everyone who spent time with us this evening, or if you're watching the video later, thank you. We appreciate you, and continue to stay safe and well. And we look forward to seeing you again, and maybe sooner than later in person. And yay to kid cameos. Good night, everybody. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.